Hey guys, Nick here with What Game Now, and we're back after priming the miniatures. See, we now have in this case it's a black primer, and there's not any obviously missed spots, aside from a little bit of what you see from the spackle, but that's not an issue. If you're curious, these are magnets. The way that I transport my models is on a magnetic sheet, so we use that. Now, in this episode of Box to Battlefield, we're going to cover painting. Now, the problem is I'm not an especially great painter. Painting is a huge rabbit hole of discussions and topics to talk about. If you would like to see my process for painting, we actually did a couple live streams a while back where you can actually watch me start with essentially this and end with a fully painted miniature over the course of one live stream to get to painted, and then one live stream to finish it off. So instead of going through that process, what I want to talk about is some things that I wish I had known and some beginner tips when it comes to you just starting out painting. So the first one that I wish I had been told is that there are a ton of different paint brands. Here we've got Reaper Master Series, Games Workshop, Vallejo Game Color. There's also a Vallejo Model Color. This is Formula P3. I also have Scale 75 paints. I've got Army Painter. I've got tons of stuff. And it doesn't really matter which brand you choose. All the paints are acrylic based. So if you're familiar with painting or looking for keywords, they're all acrylic based. They're all non-toxic. And you can mix and match these as much as you want. It's totally okay. It's not like you have to paint everything in one brand. So I have, over the course of 17 years of painting at this point, amassed a pretty significant collection of a couple hundred paints. You'll notice they come in different formats. Games Workshop comes in a pot. My note with this, and you can see it right here, these have a habit of not wanting to seal very well, so be very careful. Seal them very well and make sure that you actually have a nice seal and this doesn't happen. This is a pretty well trashed pot right now. Advantages of GW. Notice how this says base. Games Workshop does a very good job of labeling their paints and what they're designed to do. They have bases, shades, layers, highlights, dry paints that are all designed for various painting techniques. You can use them in other roles, but you're going to have to do a little bit of work. You could use this as a layer paint. You could make a wash out of this, but you're going to have to put in a little effort for it. As a side note to that, try and understand what the paint's supposed to look like, because I've had a lot of people get a GW pot, say, oh, it's just dried out and terrible, how can they sell this? It's a dry paint, it's supposed to look that way. Vallejo comes in dropper bottles. So what I mean by dropper bottle is you have a nozzle here, so the idea is you'll just drop a little bit on your painting area. The nice thing about this is it's very easy to control. I haven't really had any issues with the nozzles clogging, so take that for what you will. Same thing with Reaper, comes in a dropper bottle. And then the last brand that I use a fair bit is Formula P3. I like this because you get a fair amount of paint and it's almost ready to go out of the pot. We'll get to what I mean by that in a moment, but this is, after a little bit of shaking up, you could use this almost straight. My only complaint with them is their top likes to break off, so a lot of times, this isn't too bad, this is still attached, but a lot of times the top will become detached. Okay. So, what's right and what's wrong? It's entirely up to you. Games Workshop is, I've kind of heard it described as the McDonald's of miniature gaming. This is not bad, but there is a lot better out there. The nice thing about this is it's clearly labeled what you're supposed to do with it. They have a chart out there. You can look up Citadel color chart where they tell you here's your base coat, here's your shade, here's your highlight. They're all pre-made colors. There's no mixing involved. It works out fairly well if you're a new painter. Vallejo's got some good stuff, especially when it comes to like their reds and all that. And Formula P3 is really cool for some of the off colors. Ultimately, though, it's your choice. So once you got your paints, you're going to need to be able to apply the paint to the model, and to do that you're going to need paint brushes. And I have a selection of 5 here that I consider to be my beginner set. I've advanced beyond using just these. I have literally dozens of different paintbrushes I've acquired over the years. But these 5 are what I recommend you get. And not specific brands or anything like that, but just sizes and things like that. So first off, this is a Citadel small base brush, or I'm sorry, large base brush. And you'll notice it's got a it's chiseled and very flat. What this does is it covers large areas fairly quickly and easily. This is designed to use for base coating, which is the process where you apply a single color over large areas of the model that you're going to work off of. On these models here, they're going to get base coated in the Citadel color Xandri Dust. And it would be done with a brush like this if you wanted to do it by hand. I'm going to be using an airbrush. We'll get to that in a moment. This is a Citadel medium shade brush, a heavily abused one. This is, as its name implies, used for washes. It's got a nice fluffy tip. As you can tell, this is a well-worn brush. That's one of the reasons why I keep using it, is because this process is a little damaging to the paintbrush. Holds a lot of wash and you can apply it fairly readily. This thing is just a cheap piece of junk I picked up for like $1. You notice it's huge. It's actually a pretty substantially large brush. What this is going to do is, it's for the pots. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open this, put this in the pot, pull the paint out, and then set it on. This is a piece of plastic card. And then I can mix in things like water or some things like that. So this is not actually used for painting. This is used for preparing the paint. And then from there I've got a decent, this is a privateer work brush that has again been heavily abused over the years. This is for small areas that I'm base coating. Apologies. Get that a little bit sharper. So this is for, like, okay, I'm doing a cloak or something. It's the first step of paint that's beyond the base coat that's used for the giant base brush does. And then lastly is a detail brush of some kind. This is a Citadel small layer brush. Works totally fine. You can buy all of these paint brushes combined for about $25 US. Now that may sound like a lot, but the advice that I had was, number one, you want to invest in some decent paint brushes. You don't necessarily have to have amazing ones, but you need to at least have decent ones. Because if you go to, say, your generic hobby shop, buy that $3 bundle of a dozen paintbrushes, surely that's useful. I've actually found that they're not. They're not very good for miniature painting, and they tend to, you fight the paintbrush more than actually learning how to paint. If you want to go further, you can actually buy some more advanced paintbrushes. So this is a set that I have and I use a fair bit for my really nice models by an outfit called Slow Fuse Gaming. So you'll notice there's a lot of similar brushes. There's a very fine detail brush, there's a large basey brush, things like that. I still use the shade brush and the base brush out of this, but this is a lot of my detail stuff. As for brush care, these, you don't have to be too nice, just clean them out. General tips with painting: make sure paint never gets more than about a third of the way up the bristles, because then it'll end up in here and bad things happen. You don't have to worry about brush soap or anything like that for a cheapo set like this. These get, I actually have some soap, it's called brush soap, that cleans this out, and I do that at the end and beginning of every painting session. Helps maintain the tips and maintain the brushes. So that set has lasted me 3 years. Nothing in here is more than a year old. All of these have been bought within the last year. In fact, this is completely brand new because I finally killed my last one. Alright, other things about painting I wish I had known. The piece of plastic card I have here is what's referred to as a palette. The idea is you're going to put paint on this. Paint needs to be watered down a little bit. You don't need a ton of water, just a little bit to add some consistency to it. You know your paint is good enough if you can run it and do this motion with it. It not smear, it come out smooth, and also not have any like ridges of paint or anything like that in it. You should be able to do this, have paint coming down the entire way, and it's completely smooth. If you can get that, you know, going about an inch, inch and a half, if you can do that, your paint's probably watered down enough. This helps you control it. This also helps you get excess paint off your paintbrush. So this is just a cheap piece of plastic card I use. So other than that, a few other things that I wish I'd known. A lot of people use airbrushes. I actually use an airbrush for a lot of stuff. It's not required, but it's really helpful. What it does is it lets me spray on the paint. So undercoating, base coating these is going to be fairly easy. The last piece of advice I want to give you about painting, and again, this is something I wish that somebody had told me. It's twofold. Number one, don't rush. Okay? Painting is something that it's very easy to make a mistake early that you can't recover from without having to strip the model completely. Second, so the point that is, don't just take your time. I understand you want to get it on the table. You know, especially if you're a new player to miniature gaming, a lot of people are going to be fairly forgiving on unpainted models. My group locally doesn't care at all. You could have been playing for 10 years, you could be playing for 10 days. We don't really care about the status of your models. Personally, I play fully painted as often as possible. The other thing that I wish I had been told is it's okay to stop at various steps. So for example, if I'm painting this model, I'm going to paint it, I'm going to shade it, there's going to be highlights on it, 3 different steps there. You can stop at the first step. It's called base coating. When you base coat, you're just going to put a basic color over everything. So in this case, the gun will be black, a dark gray. The model itself is going to be a camo tan. There's going to be some silver pieces. The eye is going to be painted. And then normally I would go through and apply a shade over all of those to add definition, and then add a highlight. These guys don't get highlighted so much because I don't do that with this particular army. It's not necessary. But then you go back and highlight them. You can stop at step 1 because you can always go back and do step 2 and step 3 later. So my advice if you're just starting out is don't worry about the fancy stuff like the shades and the highlights or anything like that. Just get the block colors on the model. Then as time goes on, as you get more and more comfortable with painting, then you can go back and try the shading, and then you can go back and try the highlighting. So basically the gist of it is don't feel pressured to do all of it immediately. It takes years to get to various levels of paint. Let me see if I can grab a model here real fast. Not showing up too well, my apologies. This model's fully shaded, base coated, highlighted, and everything, and that's years of practice to get to that point. Don't feel like you have to attempt to produce those results right off the bat. So with that, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and paint these. So I'm going to airbrush them first to get the base coat on them. If I wasn't airbrushing, I would be using this and this. This is for the big areas, this is for the little areas. So on this, get a finished example here. This is a finished version of that exact same model. The tan color gets base coated. Then I do the camo scheme. Weapons are black. There's some silver bits. The missiles are going to get painted. And then what's going to happen is when I'm done completely, we're going to go ahead and do decals and the base. You can also see just barely in there that there is a painted eye in there. So this is where we're going, this is where we're starting. I'm going to do this for all of those heavy gear models you saw me prime earlier, and we will be back when that is finished. When we're done, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the basing. This is just a basic sand and some grass tufts. We're going to go through how I clear coat models to help protect them from damage, and then also do the decals. So with that, guys, have a good one, and I will catch you guys later.
Hey, this is Dave. If you like what we're doing here at What Game Now, go ahead and click on one of the videos, which should be on either side of me, or click right in the middle and go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the bell once you subscribe so that you know when we have new videos. Please go ahead and share us with your friends. Let everybody know that we're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for all of our subscribers already. And we look forward to bringing you more content every chance that we get.